detective. We read his letter, and we know exactly whether or not he will like us or not. So, if you did your homework, you should be able to avoid this reason for rejection. But if you didn't, this might be it. My point is, these are not about your quality, so don't worry about your quality. Just get the paper out there as fast as you can to a new journal, so you can have a chance to publish that paper again. When should you start contacting the editor about your paper? Here's a good rule. After 3 months, send 1 email. After 4 months, send 2 emails. And after 6 months, send an email every day. We're going to get a little crazy after 6 months if we don't hear anything. That's the key point. If you don't hear anything. If the editor emails you back and says, we're working on it, no problem, okay, we can wait. But if we hear nothing after 6 months, we become very concerned that our paper was lost. That we also received her paper from Journal B. Now, this is very likely to happen because of the page 1 problem that I told you about, right? If you don't change page 1, it's very likely to happen to you too. He already has her paper from the first journal. He gets it from the second paper. He's very angry. Double submission, he says. He emails both editors, telling them about this dirty author and what she's trying to do. These editors are also angry and send a warning email to use the same time every day. If you teach yourself to work on writing during this time, you're training yourself to start to generate thoughts during that time. I don't know about you, but I use the mornings. Mornings, I'm fresh. I want to do the most important thing first. So I wake up, I go to my very old computer that I told you about, and I start to type. Now, I type more than 15 minutes now, but I started with 15 minutes, and I built myself up slowly to be able to work for longer now. I suggest you also do the mornings. Why? Because I want to help you overcome these reasons. Because if you don't know what's stopping you from writing, that will continue.
Good morning. Sorry, good afternoon. We have lots of seats here. So if you cannot find a seat in the back, you can come to the front of the classroom. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to introduce Dr. Wallace again. Most of you have his talk last semester. I think that's why you come here today. So I don't talk anymore. Let's give the time to Dr. Wallace.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back again today. It's good to be here with you. Second time. We were just here before, and I remember your bright, sunshiny, happy faces from that time. And it's good to see that you've all returned today. My topic today is a little bit different from the one that we talked about last time. My topic today is about the habits of high-impact researchers. This is a topic that is 很重要, very important. How can we create good writing habits so that we can get our thesis done, so that we can finish our paper? How can we make writing part of our daily routine so that the writing will happen naturally and well? I've been teaching writing here in Taiwan for 11 years. I teach this semester, in fact, in Qingda, Jiaoda, and also Taida Medical School and Double E Department. I teach how to write papers. And I realized a long time ago that I can teach students exactly how to write a paper and they will still get no paper if they never write. The reason we don't get papers is not because we don't know how to write papers. We know how. The reason we don't get papers is that we never sit down and we never write. And that's the problem I want to talk about today. How can we create good writing habits that will naturally lead to our thesis being done, to publications that are ready to publish in an international journal? This will be our topic for this morning. This afternoon. My own background, I just mentioned, I teach at Qingda, Taida now, and Itri as well. I've written several books on this subject after 11 years here in Taiwan. Let me begin by mentioning some interesting statistics about scholarly writing, academic writing. A recent survey of 400,000 U.S. faculty, those are professors, revealed 26% spent 0 hours per week writing. 0. 27% never published a paper. 43% had published nothing in the past 2 years. 62% never published a book. Only 28% produced 2 publications in the past 2 years. Only 25% spent more than 8 hours a week writing. Now, this study was what we call a self-reported study. What does this mean? It means some of these people were lying. It means that the number's even lower than it looks. Another study by Lingho, by Moxley and Taylor, they suggest only 15% of faculty are writing, are productive authors. What does this mean? It means everybody's talking about writing, but nobody's writing. That's what it means. And if we want to write, we need to look very closely at this 15%. We need to see what they're doing, copy their dirty tricks, use them so that we too can become more productive scholars. And that was the purpose of the study I'm going to share with you today. I interviewed 146 what we call high-impact researchers. I interviewed them to get their tricks, to see what they were doing, so that I could pass them on to you today and to my students every semester. I wanted to know, how do high-impact researchers research so they can get more papers? How is that different from other types of researchers, or PhD students, or master's students, who are not publishing? I wanted to narrow it down to some critical factors. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. I compiled all of these tips and strategies into 7 habits that I will be sharing with you today. Now, the domains that I interviewed were very different. A lot from engineering, because of Jiaoda Tsinghua, we have a lot of professors there, but also medicine, because of NTU, and natural sciences. But I want you to notice that just because your domain is different, the good writing habits don't change. They're the same. The productive scholars in electrical engineering are doing the same things in chemical engineering or in any other type of writing. So we can learn through watching and looking at what these productive scholars are doing. What is habit number 1? Good writing habit number 1 is effective researchers have a publication supply chain. You're in engineering, you know what a supply chain is, right? A supply chain is a process that we take the raw material and we change it into the semi-finished product, into the finished product, into the inventory, into the customer, right? That's our supply chain. Now, there's a couple key points about the supply chain that I want you to notice. Number 1, there is more than one step in a supply chain. More than one step. We don't make the whole thing at one time, do we? No, we make it piece by piece, part by part. We add to it. This is the same when we write papers. Sometimes students think that if they wait long enough, if they read enough, someday a good idea will come down from God, and they will sit down in some magical night and write their paper. But that never happens. How does writing happen? It starts with the raw material, your dirty, ugly notes and draft, and then it's revised and added to many times before we get to the final copy. Those beautiful sentences that you read in the journal, they did not look like that in the beginning. No, they looked like a note on the back of a McDonald's napkin. And then they were transferred and translated and revised by the author, many times by his students, by the chair, by the editor, by the reviewer. What you see now looks nothing like what happened before. So don't expect your sentences will look like that. No one's sentences look like that. We need to be prepared for the step-by-step process necessary to convert that raw material, those notes, those ideas, into a polished, finished paper. Number one, a supply chain has many parts. Number two, when we are making a product for our customer, we want to think about the customer before we start making the product, not after we have finished the product, right? We don't manufacture a product and then think, who can buy it? No, it's too late. Very early on, we are thinking about our customer. We are thinking, what does he want? What is he interested in? What will he buy? And then we start designing and customizing our product to match that customer's need. The same thing is true when we write a paper. We also have a customer. He's called a journal editor. And he knows exactly what he wants. But do you know what he wants? Have you looked carefully at his journal, his aims and scope? Have you identified exactly who that customer is and how you can revise and customize your paper? When you finish the paper, it's too late. We need to find our journal before we have finished the introduction and discussion, so that we can connect to the conversation in his journal. That's what the editor wants. We can also tell the editor very carefully in our cover letter how our paper matches his journal. If we're unable to do that, we may have a paper that can't be sold. It's going to be very difficult for us to find a paper if we wait too long to start to think about our customer, to start to think about our journal editor, that person who will make the final decision. So, we have a supply chain because, number one, we have several steps. Number two, we have a customer. And number three, in a supply chain, we have more than one product. If you just have one paper, and you work on it, and finally finish it, and send it away, and wait for 1 year, and then reject. What is our backup plan? We have nothing. We are concerned. We are in year 6 of the PhD. We still have no paper. We need several papers. You know, publication is a little bit like juggling. When you juggle, you throw the ball in the air, but you don't wait for the ball to come down. You throw another ball in the air, right? And then another one. Same with publishing. We finish a paper, we send it to the journal. We finish another paper, send it to the journal. This one comes back, revise, okay? Revise, send it back to the journal. New paper, this one reject, okay? New journal. If you keep it going, eventually, ding, 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 you can expect to get one every year or so. But if you just have the one, you throw it up, you wait, and then it falls. Well, we are in trouble. We need more than one paper that we are working on. We're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later, and how that can actually help us as we are trying to become more productive. Let me start by talking about this supply chain. We said the supply chain begins what? With the raw material. You know what raw material is, right? Raw material. Those basic things we need to make our paper. When do we collect this raw material? All the time. That's right. All the time we are collecting the raw material. I don't know if you're like me. I have a problem when I'm writing my paper. When my computer goes on, my brain turns off. I don't know why. It's just a very unfortunate relationship. I don't think well on my screen. The only way I can think is by writing notes to myself, putting them into my bag, because my good ideas always come to me when I'm in a very bad situation. Maybe I'm riding my motorcycle, or I'm teaching class, or I'm walking somewhere. The idea will come to me. But I know I must write that idea down now. Why? Because good ideas only come one time. I know you think it will come 2 times, but it won't. It will disappear. Goodbye. Catch it now or lose it forever. We've got to be in the habit of always capturing our ideas, always writing. We're not waiting to write. We're writing all the time. I met one professor from NTU who uses Post-it notes. You know Post-it notes? Little yellow and pink pieces of paper. He keeps them in his pocket. And when he has an idea, he takes out the Post-it note. Maybe he's in the middle of class. He doesn't care. He takes it out. He writes it down. People wait. It's okay. He puts it away. He keeps going. When he goes back to his office, he takes the Post-it note and puts it on his wall. And when you walk into his office, his whole wall is just covered with yellow and pink pieces of paper. And when you open the doors, the walls will shake, you know, as the wind blows around through the office. And I asked him, I said, "Sir, how many papers are you writing?" And he said, "I'm writing 3 papers. And I said, "Why 3 papers?" He said, "Well, I only have 3 walls." He said, "The door is here. I can't use that wall." And I said, "When do you know when the paper is finished?" He said, "Well, that's easy. The paper is finished when the wall is full. And when the wall is full, I take down all the notes, I type them in, I revise 3 times, I publish." It's working for him. He's writing all the time, always adding, because we cannot think very well about several things at one time. We can think about one thing well at one time, and we need to capture it when we're thinking about it. Later, we will add that to our file. We will revise that. We will refine that. But catch it now. Don't lose those good opportunities. Don't lose those wonderful contributions to your work. Let me also say, when you want to write your paper, it's much easier to revise your paper when you already have something there that you added before. When you start to write your paper with a blank computer screen with a little blinking mouse, oh, very discouraging. But when you have already put something there, now it's easier to add and revise what you already have put down. Master's students, and we have a lot of you today, consider writing a paper for publication now while you're in your master's degree. Why wait? Why waste these 2 years? You're spending 2 years of your life to get a thesis. Why not get a paper too? Cut that up into a good paper, send it away to a journal, because let me tell you, you will be far more employable with a paper than without one. Everybody has a thesis. Thesis is cheap. Who cares? No one reads them. But when you can have a journal paper, you can prove to your future boss, "Look, my English is good. I have good ideas. Take me." And he'll say, "Sure, join our company." I actually had 2 of my students from my Jiaoda class who were master's students and who published, got great jobs at TSMC. And when they interviewed, the HR manager said, "Everybody has a thesis. Few people have a paper. That makes you special. Welcome." That was their key point right there. Consider how you might do this as well. Consider how you might also write and publish now while you're a master's student. Before the PhD, if you want to do a PhD, it's very easy to convince your professor that you can publish because you already published. He will be impressed with what you've done. Try to publish now. Maintain a stock of papers under review constantly. I talked about this already. Don't just have one paper under review. Have more than one paper under review. In fact, here's a good rule. If you want 1 paper per year, you need to have 7 papers in your supply chain at all times. That doesn't mean you have to write 7 papers in 1 year, but it takes a long time to submit and to revise and to publish. So you could be working on 2 or 3. You could have 2 or 3 under review, 1 rejected, waiting to go to a new journal. There's your 7 papers in your supply chain. If you've got the 7 papers, you can be confident of getting an average of 1 per year. Again, if you just have 1, you have high risk, very high risk, to get no paper in time before you graduate. We need more than 1 paper. So how can you get so many papers? Let me give you another piece of advice. Don't put 2 good ideas in 1 paper. Put them into 2 papers. If you write everything you know in paper number 1, what are you going to say for paper number 2? Also, the longer your paper becomes, the more difficult it is to find that paper a home, because nobody likes long papers. Nobody likes long papers. If you have a long paper, and you can cut that paper into 2 short papers, your chance of publishing more than doubles, because again, there's a strong bias against long papers. Editors don't like long papers. Why? Because they would rather see 2 new authors than 1 long author in their journal. Journal companies don't like long papers. Why? More expensive to publish a long paper than a short paper. And they're very concerned about this these days. Number 3, reviewers don't like long papers because it takes a longer time to read it and review it. Your review time becomes longer. So basically, the longer your paper becomes, the harder it is to publish it. Write short papers with a narrow, particular, specific scope. A narrow scope. We want to be deep and narrow, not wide and shallow with some long paper that goes on and on and on. Also, the longer your paper becomes, the more English errors your reviewer will find in your paper. Again, reducing the chances that you can publish. Try to write more shorter papers. Consider different subtopics. It worries me when I see PhD students wait a long, long time to start writing. Year 5, year 6, they start writing. And they're worried because they don't have much time left, so what do? They write 3 papers about one topic, send it away, and are rejected 3 times for the same reason. You see, it's better to write early. It's better to be rejected early because we can learn through rejection what the editor wants, what the journal wants. We can learn through review, even failed review, about how to do better next time. When you're trying to shoot the target and you miss, what do? You change next time, right? And then you shoot again. But when you wait a long time and then just shoot 3 times in the dark, you could easily miss all 3 times. So we should start early, fail early, to publish earlier as well. Don't wait, don't wait. Time goes fast. You're not getting any younger. Publish now. Try to publish now. Develop template sentences. This is also related to my supply chain idea. In a supply product for another product, right? Sometimes the wheel from product A will fit on the product B. We can recycle some parts. We can do this with our papers too. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying copy your paper again. But what I'm saying, when you finish writing paper A, if paper B is related to paper A, often a lot of the literature review, maybe the method, some of the discussion, can be recycled, can be reused again in the new paper. It's a good idea to see what you can use. And let me even go smaller than this. Often the professors that I interviewed use something they called template sentences. What is a template sentence? Well, basically, the academic paper today is very formula in its structure. There are sentences that we can use and modify for every paper for the different steps of our publishing. So if you're reading a paper and you see, wow, I like these sentences, I like the order, copy and paste it to a file under Introduction, Knowledge Gap, Introduction, Literature Review. Then later, don't copy the whole thing. Don't misunderstand me. But look at the format of that sentence and how the author has done it, and copy the style. Catch the flow of the idea. Catch the way the author introduces his. Use that in your own paper as well. In fact, let me go a step further. I suggest, I do this in my own class, we use what we call the template, the model paper. What is a model paper? When we are writing our paper, we will go to the library. We will take keywords from our paper, from the method, from the basic topic that we are studying. We will try to find another paper very closely related to ours, and we will use this paper like a checklist. We will see, point by point, how did the author introduce his problem? How did he introduce his literature? How did he introduce his knowledge gap? How did he write his objective? And we will go through and write our paper using this one as a model, as a template. Now, I have a suggestion about this. Is a wonderful way that you can save a lot of time, encourage yourself, Give yourself timelines and goals. Use the model paper. One student brought me his model paper, and it was a very famous paper. Nobel Prize winning paper. And he was excited because he said, look, I should copy the best. Actually, this is usually a bad idea. Don't use those very famous papers as your model paper. Why? Because the format of the very famous paper is usually much different from the format of the typical paper that we will write. Most of the time, the author will change the style completely. And the editor will publish this paper, but we don't know why it was published. Was it published because the author was very famous? Maybe. Because the results won the Nobel Prize? Probably. Or because the writing was very good. You see, we can't be sure about the writing. Maybe the writing was terrible. But because the author was good and the results were great, it got published. We may be copying the wrong thing, is what I'm saying. So what's a good paper to copy? Go to the library. Use your keywords. Try to find a not famous author, but he's experienced. Experienced but not famous. Okay? Some professor somewhere. Try to find a paper where the results were not very good, or maybe they failed. This is usually a very good model paper. Because we know that if the author is not famous, and the results are bad, the writing must be good, or it would be rejected. We can eliminate for those other things. And the resulting paper is usually just wonderful. In my medical class last semester, one student brought me his model paper. And it was a great model paper. Basically, in this paper, the author thought it was about Japan. Japanese graduate students. Sleep disorder. This was the title of the paper. Basically, the author thought that in Japan, students didn't sleep very well because in America, students slept even worse. So, because the high-stress culture in Japan, the author believed the Japanese students didn't sleep. In the end of this study, the author was wrong. Japanese students, they sleep like babies, no problem. So, how can he publish this paper? He failed. He was wrong in his hypothesis. But when we went through the paper, it was beautifully organized. Basically, the problem was well presented, the literature review was beautiful, the knowledge gap was well done, the method was organized, the results were perfect, and the implications were fantastic. Because the author basically said, even though we failed, we identified a way that other researchers will not die like we died. And this is our contribution. And it was accepted. And we used this as a model paper to publish because it was a wonderfully organized, failed paper. Good model paper. Something like that you could consider when you're doing your search in the library. Find a paper, again, that is not exceptional in the results. Because then you know the writing must have been good. Or that paper would have been rejected. Use English editing in your supply chain. Now, I don't say this just because I have an editing company, but because a big reason for rejection of our journal papers is English. Remember this? I showed you last time, right? We talked about the English errors as being the #1 reason for rejection. Don't let this be your reason. Have your friend edit it for you. Or edit it yourself carefully. Let me give you a trick that I use. When I'm reading my own paper, I know what I want to say. So even if there's a mistake, I don't see my own mistake. Do you ever do that sometimes? Especially, I often make a mistake. I will type from, F-R-O-M, as form, F-O-R-M. I do this very quickly. And when I read it, I don't even notice it. And Microsoft Word doesn't help me because form is also a word. From and form are a word. So basically, I can't catch my own mistakes. How can I catch my own mistakes? I read my paper backward. You should try this as well. I start at the end, and I read backward, sentence by sentence. This forces me to slow down and focus on each sentence English rather than the idea. Because when I'm reading my paper from the top to the bottom, I'm looking at the ideas, and I know what I mean. But when I read backward, I will find a lot more of my errors, especially these misspelled words like there, T-H-E-R-E, or there, T-H-E-I-R. Microsoft Word wouldn't help me, but I can probably find it if I read backward in my own paper as well. Habit number 2. What was habit number 1? What was it? It was we have a... You guys are killing me. Supply chain. Right? Do you remember that? Just lie to me and tell me you remember so I feel good. Do you remember? Supply chain? Yeah? Yeah. Oh, good class. Okay, good. Habit number 2. Effective researchers sacrifice other interests. Now, when I talk about this in my class, this does not make me very popular. Nobody likes to talk about sacrifice. It's not a very interesting topic. But I need to tell you, if you want to get papers, you're going to have to give up some activities that you're doing now. And more importantly, if you want papers, you're going to have to focus on writing only when you're writing. You have to focus exclusively, entirely on writing. I walked into my writing laboratory in Jiaodong. This is a few years ago. I saw PhD students late at night in the laboratory. They are supposed to be writing, but what are they doing? They're playing Sangor. Computer game. Don't pretend like you don't know what that is. Warcraft, you know, those RPG games. We talked about that before. And I told this student, I said, why are you playing computer games? Of course, it's because computer games are interesting. And he told me, teacher, I'm playing computer games and I'm writing my paper. He said, I'm very efficient. I can play the computer games and I can do this. Another student is reading his paper and he's doing MSN. He said, I can chat online and I can read. I have the double function, he told me. Of course, they are just kidding themselves. We cannot do two things at one time, particularly not writing and anything else at the same time. It takes 10 minutes to get into what we call the writing flow. Get into the writing flow. If you are stopping every 3 minutes to chat on MSN, you're never really writing. You're just fooling yourself. So when you write, only write. Cut the internet cord. Throw away the cell phone. Focus only on writing during your writing time. I'll tell you my own experience. I have a computer at my house, and I used to have a hard time writing because of email. You know, email is like a disease. You see it, you think, let me check my email. What, just 1 second, and the day is gone. You just have to. It's very dangerous to check your email, especially during your writing time. So what I finally did is I got this very old computer in my house. It's so old. Only one software program, Microsoft Word. And on this old Microsoft Word computer, there's only one thing that I can do. I can only write on this computer. I've cut off all the other options. You might do that too. Find a special place, a special computer. Limit the function so that you'll be more likely to get the writing done. Our American president, Theodore Roosevelt, he said this. He said, when you play, play hard. When you work, don't play at all. Good advice for those of us who are writing. We play or we work, but we don't do them together. It doesn't work. Habit number 3. Effective researchers practice research like they practice golf. Let's review. Habit number 1. We have a what? We have a supply chain. Habit number 2. When I was back in San Diego, I used to go golfing every week with my uncle. My uncle's a really good golf player. He can take a tiny club and hit a tiny ball into a tiny hole a long, long way away, and I don't know how. Have any of you tried playing golf? It's very difficult. Tiger Woods, he makes it look easy, but it is difficult. It is hard to even hit the ball. And if I am lucky enough to hit the ball will definitely not go in the hole. It will go into the lake, the trees, other countries, but it's not going to be even close to the hole. And I asked my uncle, I said, "Uncle, how can you be so good at golf?" And he said, "Steve, if you want to be a good golf player, you have to practice your golf game." How does a golf player practice his golf game? Well, a golf player doesn't think about golf as just one game. That's the key point. A golf player thinks about golf as many little games that together will influence his total score. You see, the golf player has the different size clubs for the different distances, the different conditions. He has a club for the sand. He has one for the grass, one for the tree, one from far away, one from very close. And he will use the club that will best get him closer to the hole. Now, the golf player is strong or he's weak in the different clubs that he has to play with. A golf player knows if he wants to be good in his whole game, he needs to practice where he is weak over and over again to improve his total score. So he will take his 7 or his 8 or his 9 and he will practice and practice and practice because he knows that's the best way to, again, increase his score. As researchers, we also have different parts of our publication game. We have our writing, our English, our organization, our research, choosing the right journal, talking to our reviewers, dealing with our rejected paper. All of these influence our score. All of them are important, and we need to identify where we are losing points so we too can improve our total score. Let me show you a quote from one of my interviews about this. Here's the scholar. Now, this scholar published 7 papers last year, but he's not talking about how good he is. No, he's still focusing on his weakness. He's still talking about where he can make more points. What does he say? He says, "Traditionally, my introduction is a bit weak. I have a challenge selling the problem to reviewers. I've got to be able to present the problem better if I want people to be interested in my solution. I'm getting better, but I'm constantly aware that this is a weakness and I need to practice to improve." He's a good researcher. He's publishing a lot, but is he satisfied? No. He's looking for where he can get more points. He's still looking for his weaknesses. His weakness is a common weakness, by the way. He says, selling the problem. Selling the problem. This is a big point for all of us. If you cannot sell me your problem, I will never care about your solution. I only care about the solution after I've seen the problem. No problem, no solution. Remember, we talked about this for the abstract, right? Big monster, big hero. No monster, no hero. We care very much about our problem, and that's what he's talking about here for his weakness. We can also imitate skillful writers. If I want to be a good golf player, for a minute, writing papers is pretty boring. It's not very interesting. In all of my interviews, I would ask professors, "Do you like writing?" And I was surprised how often good writers just don't like to write. They would often speak with pain and suffering about their writing. They did not enjoy it at all. But they have to keep themselves motivated, right? They have to keep going. How can they keep going when they hate writing? How can they continue to publish when they don't like it? Well, they don't think about writing, they think about something else. Yes, something else. Researchers would think of killing monsters, fighting battles, making money, changing the world, getting a promotion. They would put some other mental model in their mind that motivated them. And every time they sat down to think about writing, they wouldn't think about writing. No, writing takes away your energy. They would think about the good things that would come from writing. I had one student. This is 3 years ago. Sad story, actually. He came to me, he told me, "Teacher, my paper was rejected, and now I have to take 1 more year to graduate." He was in my class, and I felt bad for him. I said, "Well, next year, you know, you can, this is my job, you know, next year you'll graduate." And he said, "Teacher, you don't understand." He said, "I have a girlfriend, and my girlfriend told me she will not marry me until I finish my PhD. She doesn't want to marry the low-level masters. She wants the high-level PhD. So now my whole wedding is delayed by 1 year." This is a sad story, but why I'm telling you is the next year, this same PhD student was on fire. It was amazing. He was writing, publishing, 3 papers in 1 year, and he graduated. Now, when he was writing, was he thinking about writing? Was he? No. He was thinking about his beautiful future wife. That mental image was inspiring him. That mental image was keeping him going. Now, I don't know what motivates you, but I'm sure it's not writing. So you need to think about something else that will keep you going on those dark, cold nights when you want to go to sleep, but you know you need to write. You need some model of the future successful you, or something you will get, to keep you going, because we must sustain our writing. We know writing isn't interesting, so we have to keep ourselves motivated. Think about what that might be, and use it. Use it. You will need it to keep your work going. Habit number 5, and you will feel very guilty in your heart, and you will go, you will write. You need this. You need this little push to keep you going. Your professor, he may be helpful, but probably he will give you the deadline that's a long way away, so you will delay and delay and delay. You won't be doing the daily writing, the regular writing, but a writing group will push you faster, push you toward that goal of getting your work done. Consider how you could do a writing group. Number 2, if you have no friends, make enemies. That's also good motivation for you. I see this particularly sometimes among, let's say, assistant professors. They all want to be promoted, so they will compete against each other. How many papers can we produce? He's produced 5. Can I get 6? I want to kill that guy. This kind of ongoing competition can be very healthy when we want to get a paper done. I don't know why. As humans, we love fighting so much. I don't know why. Seems to be in our DNA. You know, we watch fighting on TV, we pay people to fight each other. When we become researchers, our DNA doesn't change. We still enjoy this feeling of competition. So you could consider a good opponent, a good competitor, and try to beat him, try to get more than him. This might also inspire you. The third way that we can use the social energy of other researchers is political energy. I'm going to spend some time on this because it's very important. Researchers are a little bit political. And what do I mean by this? I mean that as researchers, we realize that our reviewers make the final decision about whether we live or die. These 2 humans are motivated by very human interests. They are often subjective in their evaluation. So, number 1, we need to make sure that these reviewers don't hate us, okay? And number 2, hopefully they'll love us, so that they'll say yes and not no. Because even the most scientific scholar is still human and can still have his feelings changed, even subconsciously, after reading our paper. So we need to be concerned about this. Now, this is maybe the dark side of publishing. And so, but I want to tell you that it's very real, it's very true. There was one study done by Eberharter. He did a very fascinating study. He showed that in the top 10 journals in every domain, a very high percentage of papers are never cited again by anyone, even the author. Basically, he noticed that in the top journals, we have a lot of zero-impact garbage papers. And so he did a research study. He wanted to know why. Why can we have so many papers that are zero impact in top journals? from 20 to 50% of the papers were not cited again. The results of his research are very interesting. Basically, he showed that in every domain, there are a group of scholars who know each other and always say, yes, my good friend, except. It does matter. It does influence. Now, students are often upset by this. They say, this is not fair. And of course, they're right. It's not fair. And then they say, we should fight the system. But here's where they're wrong. We shouldn't fight the system. We need to join the system. And how do we do that? By making friends with our reviewers and making sure that we don't make enemies with them. Let me show you some common ways that this might happen. And I talked about this a little bit in another speech with you, but I'm going to go into more detail now. First, don't criticize your references. Why? Well, where do your reviewers come from? Your reviewers come from your paper. That's right. Your editor doesn't know your subject, so he uses your paper to find a reviewer. Who chooses your reviewer? You do. What happens if in the beginning of your paper you criticize all the reviewers? You say he was stupid and he was an idiot, but I'm a genius. These reviewers will again fight back. They will criticize you. When you fight reviewers, reviewers always win. Don't fight reviewers. Be careful here. Here's an editor. He says, I think the author, however, and why. Okay, here I'm saying he was effective in his problem, but I have a different problem. That's much better than saying that he's stupid and I'm smart, right? Or the X benefit of Smith's approach are not applicable to Y. He had a benefit, but I could not apply it. Again, much safer than trying to show his weakness and my strength. Rejected before it was published. Now, if Nobel Prize winners get rejection letters, you and I certainly will. My favorite example is George Akerlof. George Akerlof has the Nobel Prize for economics. George Akerlof was working in a small college in the United States. His chair told him, George, you must publish or you're going to be fired. George was scared. He didn't want to lose his job. So George wrote a paper called Lemons and Used Car Sales. It was kind of an odd title for his paper. He sent it away to a journal. The journal rejected him and they said, it's too general. So he sent it to another one and they said, reject, too specific. And he sent it to a third one and that one said, we don't know what you're talking about. So, poor George, he's going to be fired. He's really nervous, so he says, I'll take a little vacation to India, sort of clear my mind before I die. And he took a trip to India. He came back and he said, let me try just one more journal. This was a low-impact journal. And the journal accepted his paper, but you know, that paper is now the most highly cited paper in all of economics and won him the Nobel Prize. So don't give up is my point. Try again. Sometimes we got to play ping pong with our paper a little bit. We hit it to the journal, they hit it back, or we hit it to another journal, we hit it back. But before we send that paper back, there are some important things that we must change in our journal paper, or the next journal will know the last journal rejected us. We don't want them to know we were rejected. You will feel when your paper is rejected. I want to go through these to prepare you for what you will feel. The first feeling you will have is depression. Oh, you will feel so blue. When one of my students disappears for 2 weeks, I know what happened. You know. The paper was rejected. And it's natural to feel sad. Your paper is your baby. You worked on this baby for 2 years. Now nobody loves your baby. Of course you're unhappy. You will feel sad. You will feel depressed. The next feeling you will have, the students will come back to me and now they are angry at the editor. They will show me their letter and they will say, see, the stupid editor doesn't understand my genius idea. This is the second emotion. The third emotion, they are now angry at the whole system. They'll say, we are in trouble. This is sad because there are other reasons for rejection besides bad quality. Remember the Nobel Prize winners? Their papers were rejected several times before publication. yours may need to too. Don't give up so quickly. I would suggest maybe the next one. Send the article with no changes to another journal. I don't like this one, actually. This is my favorite. If you send your paper with no changes, what might happen? The same reviewer might get it, and the editor will know you were rejected, right? So we said we should change at least those things that I talked about. At a minimum, we need to change those things. And honestly, you should read the comments and fix any easy mistakes. English mistakes, for example, you can correct before you send it to a new journal. And some negative comment about your paper from a reviewer before, and he says, not this guy, not again, oh, just reject. What should you do? Just wait for a new editor to come. The journal will change editor every 3 years, right? Every 3 years the editor will change. So when a new editor comes, you have a new shot. Try again. He doesn't know you. And you have a fair chance to get a review. And this is why we need more than one customer, more than one journal that could accept our paper. In the beginning, when we're looking for journals, and I have a different topic only about journals, but when we're looking for journals, we want more than one potential journal that could say yes. Because if you just have one and he says no, then we're really in trouble. So we will select several early on when we're writing our paper that might potentially say yes to our paper. Waiting for the journal's decision. Every day after you send your paper to the journal, you're checking your email. Am I accepted? Am I accepted? Am I accepted? You wait, you wait, you wait. Weeks, months. So painful. The good news is, if you're waiting, you haven't been rejected yet. You know, sometimes we get the rejection very quickly, maybe less than 1 week. No review, only the editor. He will say, thank you, but no thank you, goodbye, something cheerful like that. Why does this happen? Why would we be rejected with no review by the editor? Is it because our research is very, very bad? Is that why? Well, maybe, but hopefully not. There are other, more likely reasons for fast editor rejection. Let me talk about those.